In this video, let's go ahead and learn how we're going to take these values that we have in our form and submit them to our server. So currently, if I click on this button, submit, you can see that nothing happens. And that's because we haven't implemented this part yet. So let's go ahead and open up our IDE. And what we're going to do is inside of add student form. So right here. So what I want you to do first is to actually go ahead and press B. So lowercase b there and lowercase b there. So by default, if we have this button right here, so this is not a button provided by ant-d. So remember, this is the button. So this one right here. So by default, if we use this button, then whenever we click on it, it will respond correctly to submit. So if I open up Chrome and then add new student, you can see that the button has changed style. So if I click on it, you can see that this works. So by using the ant-d button, we have to invoke the submit ourselves. So let me go ahead and cancel out of this and then go back to VS Code. So to use this button right here, so button, so we have to use a method which is provided by Formic. So inside here, so you can see that they give us access to values, errors, touched, handle change, handle blur, handle submit is submitting. And we also have a method right here called submit form. So now what we can do is actually say on click on this button. So on click equals to, and then what we're going to do is actually invoke the submit and then form, and then simply invoke that. If I save this, go back to Chrome and then add new student, you can see that we get this nice button. Now if I click submit, you see that works. So this is actually capturing all the values, but what we need to do is actually take these values and then send them to our backend. So let's actually check the current behavior. So let's go ahead and simply say John and then Jones, John Jones at and then gmail.com and then mail. So if I submit, you can see that we get this JSON object containing every single information about our form, which is really cool. And to be honest, we haven't done anything. Remember, we haven't done anything. So this came by default with Formic, which is amazing, to be honest. So you can see that Formic is powerful. So let me actually show you where this is happening. So if I go back to VS Code, you see right here, so we have this function right here on submit. And on submit currently has a timeout. So you can see that has a timeout of 400 milliseconds. And then what it does is simply takes the values that we have in our form and then it alerts. So this is what you see here. So this is cool. So that means that we can take this JSON object and send that to our server. So remember, also, this JSON object, it's already validated for us with our custom validation, which is amazing. So let me actually go back, and you might have noticed that. So if I press submit again, you can see that this button right here is now disabled. So I cannot click on this button right here, the submit button. And this is because by default, when you submit, this button is disabled. And if I go back, you can see that on submit, whenever it finishes the alert, we set the submitting to false. So go ahead and press OK, and you can see that it's now ready for us to click again. So what I want to do is actually disable this button right here until the form is valid. And also it's been touched. So to do that, let's go ahead and open up VS Code. And then right here, so you can see that we have a couple of things. So let's actually go ahead and grab is and then valid. So this is valid property. So this simply tells us whether the form is valid or not. So now what we're going to do is actually on this button right here. So where we have the disable. So let me actually put this on a new line so you can see exactly what we are doing. So you can see that we have disable is submitting, and then let's go ahead and say or, and we're going to say or if it's touched. So if it has been touched and it's invalid, so it's invalid, so is valid, and I simply get the reverse of that. So if I save this and then go back to Chrome and add new student, and now you can see that by default this is disabled until the form is valid. So let's go ahead and pretty much just fill with anything, and hello@gmail.com, and then let's go ahead and say mail, and you can see that the button becomes available. So to prove a point, if I make this form invalid again, you can see that this is disabled because we only accept male or female. So if I say female, you can see that now the button is available. So if I press submit, you can see that we get this JSON. Next, let's go ahead and implement the server-side logic that will take this JSON payload and then store that inside of our database.